Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. Actually, our third Robert Frost, I want to say, in about, 6 weeks here? We've been doing a lot of Bobby.
Yeah, he's our newfound favorite, right? I think I like his stuff a lot because he is arguably the best poet to be able to get the most out of the fewest words. There's so much depth to such a short poem.
And that's saying a lot, right? Because usually poetry tends to be very terse. It uses form, it uses its function, as well as like the meaning. That it really is very efficient with like the word count and I think how it could possibly impact the reader. And I love the fact that it is getting you more and more into poetry. Let's do a quick reading and kind of talk through what our reactions are and kind of like interpretations and meanings behind this one. Fire and Ice. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice.
Frosty. I had to make one pun. I had to.
You did. But to that point though, to be fair, obviously, fire and ice, two apocalyptic endings to the world put on the table in this poem. We are meant to kind of react to that. And it's kind of interesting because I usually think of the two canceling each other out. Right, fire and ice, like they're at war with each other, the eternal struggle. But here it's almost like one's gonna win, right? Like why would our boy Bobby Frost put us in this damned if you do, damned if you don't? Like you can vote either way, you're gonna lose type of situation.
Historically, it feels a little bit like he's talking about apocalyptic moments. Are we gonna die from a nuclear war? Are we going to die from another ice age or a meteor hitting us? How are we going to choose our end, or are we going to get a choice to our end? Feels like a very surface level easing into what this poem could be about and giving us of the choices of fire and ice.
Okay, I actually 100%. I did not even think about the historical angle of looking at it from like the war or Cold War. This is well before Cold War perspective. But I guess you could take it there depending on if you want to take it anachronistically or not. I actually had a very simple way, at a couple ways of looking at this, but to me, there's obviously fire typically is representing like a fire or a passion. And I wrote down, some common literary examples. You have the Hunger Games with Katniss was literally the girl on fire, right? She was always rebellious, always reactionary. But even then, Game of Thrones, A Song of Fire and Ice, you had Daenerys who, I talked about this with my wife, that when she'd burn her enemies, it was typically when she was like really emotional, right? Whether it be love for her people and the freeing of people or her anger for her enemies, like fire was clearly used for how she would burn like the enemies with the dragons and such. And then ice to go continuously lowbrow. Here I am. Sorry, I've got young kids here at home. Frozen, right? You've got Elsa who's frozen herself off from the world, but she's isolated. She literally seals herself in and has like the ice powers. But you do have like the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe with the Ice Queen being separated, or even to continue with Game of Thrones, the White Walkers, right? The army of the dead separated from humanity in the cold. It's very clear that you kind of have a typical motif with fire being this passion and energy and ice being like isolation. But they both are viewed as a way of destruction, I guess, like a way of destroying the soul in some ways. That it's almost like if you have too much passion, you can burn yourself out. If you have too much isolation, you don't have enough drive and desire to continue forward almost.
I'm surprised you didn't throw in X-Men there. I know you're a big Marvel guy, and you didn't throw in Iceman and
Pyro.
The flaming Pyro. Yeah, I mean, because Pyro's very passionate, right? And he joins the Brotherhood of Mutants because he wants to, fight for his rights and everything. And Bobby seems very cool and collected. He kind of isolates himself off from the rest of the X-Men. But for me, I went down the path of, you guessed it, Star Wars. This poem felt very much like Anakin, of these two polar opposites. And I kind of thought, is it light and dark? Is that what this is? Because as you said, Frost is kind of taking us down this path of two different types of destruction. And if we look at Anakin and you look at the dark side, there is kind of a difference in the paths of the dark side. Anakin was very passionate. He loved, and he overcommitted because of his feelings for Padme. And then you have people like Palpatine, who is all about greed and anger and power, and he's cold and Anakin's hot. And I really felt that is a good representation of kind of the fire and the ice here that Frost was going for. And I think that you can see that in a lot of different literature and movies and books, and that's where I went.
Well, and I know sometimes we get heat for this, and that's fine. I don't care. Star Wars, like, I've read some various books and writings on it. It actually is very mature, the way it kind of like assimilates a lot of different worldviews, if you will. And one thing that I think is always interesting that I think this poem really speaks to is you had the Jedi who always wanted to destroy the Sith, right? If we just got rid of evil, everything would be perfect. And the Sith would be like, I will have order and control if I just destroy the Jedi. Like, that is how we reach peace, is each of them thought you had to destroy the other. But it was this cyclical nature that neither one ever wins. It just creates more of a problem the more that they struggle, as opposed to trying to find that balance. And I think you see that with various worldviews like yin and yang, Taoism, and stuff like that. I don't know how well I ascribe to that, but like, you can also see various forms of that with a lot of religions, in terms of Buddhism with finding peace with nature, and Shintoism, but even Christianity with the eternal fight between good and evil, if you will. Like, I think it is more mature than people give it credit for. But here, let me hit you with this one, because I've always thought this was interesting. If we are going down like the you can't destroy either side, whether you're going the Star Wars route or not. You brought up Anakin, okay? And you brought up his attachment to Padme, right? He didn't want to lose his girlfriend or future wife, right? He didn't want to lose his chance at future children, essentially, with her, right? Like, he's a family man in some senses of the word. And he would do anything to avoid being eaten up or losing that, right? And it's like, if you remember when we did Demons by Dostoevsky, and I talked a lot about Carl Jung and his psychology, that we repress certain feelings and emotions in us in the same way that perhaps desire, like the fire, the passion, can burn a creative person out. If you're a writer, for example, right? Or ice, if you're too separated, you never get that motivation to really get going, aka you lock yourself in a room and never actually make progress and use the world as inspiration as a writer. So here's my interesting thought is Anakin was actually destroyed by his repression and inability to cope with taking those fear of detachment, the fear of loss, and incorporating that into his life. He tried to get rid of it and to hide it and destroy it, as opposed to assimilating it, with Carl Jung would say, you need to assimilate those dark tendencies, the shadow version of yourself, into your life. You have to find balance with that dark side, as opposed to just repressing it. And I think whether you're looking at it as passion, destroying yourself, or indifference, being separated, I think you see that there is, sometimes you need to look at those dark sides of yourself and figure out how do you better assimilate it in a healthy way, as opposed to letting it destroy you.
I think balance is key here. And that's something that I take away from Star Wars and this poem is, if you can find balance, you can avoid that destruction. Anakin and the fire, the passion, it makes you become obsessed. He became obsessed with saving Padme, and he had not, she would have lived, she would have been fine. But then there's the other side, that it's almost this nature versus nurture, because he's taught this by the Jedi, and he's taught to push down his emotions. He's taught to not have attachments, and that dehumanized him, so that he didn't know how to deal with these human feelings. He didn't know how to deal with being so in love. He wasn't taught these things, and that's something that he was longing for, because he didn't know his father. He had to abandon his mother. So he has all these conflicted emotions, and he's told just turn them off. Don't deal with them. That's the best way. And then he doesn't, and he explodes as a result. And he's burnt up, right? Figuratively and literally by that. It destroyed his world. And I think that's where this poem for me, Frost is saying, your passion can destroy the world. Your dehumanization can destroy the world. You need to find that balance to move through it so that you can be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, as you're saying that, there's like this show tune that's like just talks about just turn it off like a light switch. It's like about repression and how you're hiding your true self and failing to assimilate that in real life. But anyways, I completely agree. And I think we had the same takeaway that it's not just about rage and apathy. It's not just about obsession and detachment, right? It's how do you integrate these and find that balance? Because if you go too far anyway, any obsession can destroy you, can destroy society. And I think that's maybe something, with the time of recording this, it's September 15th. Not going to go into the political events that are happening around this time, but the world is just on fire with energy one way or the other. And everybody is screaming from opposite ends how they're right. It's very scary how far I think we can go one way or the other. That I think Bobby Frost had a little bit of a good message here for us to kind of think about how do we better integrate and find that balance, because I really hope the world continues in a healthier state in the future, and we can find that we don't need to live in extremes and can live in the middle and maybe find that harmony. But that's my little way of like, when I'm in the middle of reading this poem, how it reflects the real world. And I don't know what the world will be like when you're reading this, when you're watching this video. It might be totally different. But that's our talk on Bobby Frost. That is just how we read a poem and react to it in this world. I think it's a very good message and something worth dissecting by today's standards.
Fear leads to hate. Hate leads to anger. Anger leads to suffering. So be good to each other out there.
So obviously you have to leave a fire and an ice emoji if you don't know what to say and enjoyed the talk today, to help the ever hungry YouTube algorithm know that you found balance in today's discussion. My name's been Una. Bobby Frost playlist down below. Thank you for spending time with us today. Peace.
Water.
Be like water, my friend.